You Booked It, episode 41. Hey, entertainers and performers of the world. I'm your host, Dane Reese, and welcome to You Booked It, where I chat with inspiring entertainers 7 days a week. By digging into their journey, we're going to discover everything you need to do to be a successful entertainer. You know, because training usually skips that part about how to actually make your skills work for you in the real world. Fellow entertainers, my drive here at You Booked It is to share the inspiring and incredible journeys of successful entertainers. We are here to support your journey. So go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the You Booked It email community where we dig deep into truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you book that next audition, submission, or gig. If you enjoy this free podcast, please show your support and search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app where you can subscribe so you don't miss an episode, leave a rating and review. And to show our appreciation for your, fingers crossed, 5-star rating and review, I will give you a shout out on an upcoming episode. And now, let's do this. Alrighty, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Lauren Lukacek. Are you ready for this, Lauren?
Yes, I'm excited.
All right. Lauren is a New York City-based actress and singer, originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Lauren earned a BFA in musical theater from the Boston Conservatory. Lauren recently appeared in the original company of the first national tour of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Love Never Dies, directed by Simon Phillips. She spent 2015 and 2016 on the road with the first national tour of Roger and Hammerstein's Cinderella, where she understudied Marie, the fairy godmother. She also understudied the role of Eliza Doolittle while on tour with My Fair Lady from 2011 to 2012. Lauren has appeared regionally at North Shore Music Theater, Ogunquit Playhouse, Gateway Playhouse, and the John W. Engelman Theater. While playing Maria in The Sound of Music at Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center, it became the highest-selling show in the theater's history. She currently resides in Brooklyn with her fiancé and their corgi, where she surprises her neighbors with delicious baked goods. Lauren also creates videos on how to live a more sustainable, eco-friendly life. Lauren, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Fill in the gaps, who you are, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry.
Thank you for that gorgeous intro. I really have a big head now. um, well, I'm a musical theater performer and an environmental activist. As you said, I went to the Boston Conservatory and got a BFA in musical theater with you. And then I moved to New York City a month after I graduated, and I've been here for 11 years now, mostly performing on national tours and regional houses. I love to bake, like you said, and I love vintage dresses. And I'm happily living in Brooklyn with my fiance, so waiting out the pandemic right here in the heart of it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's move on to our next section here. And look, I am a sucker for a good quote. What is your favorite quote you'd like to share with our listeners?
So this one's at the bottom of all my emails that I send. It's from Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and this is the quote. "Do your little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world."
I love that. I've never heard that, but it's fantastic. And how have you applied that quote to your daily life and your career besides the signature of your emails?
6 years ago, I felt like I wasn't where I thought I would be in life. I hadn't been on Broadway. I hadn't won a Tony. I wasn't at the time in a lasting relationship, and I was depressed about my birthday that was coming up. After a lot of feeling very sorry for myself, I realized that I was only thinking about myself, and I realized that I hated that. So I turned the story around and started to brainstorm how I could help others on my birthday. I borrowed a friend's idea of rejecting birthday presents and instead asking for acts of birthday kindness from all my friends. I decided to dedicate my birthday to doing random acts of kindness all over the city. It completely changed my outlook about my birthday. I got messages all day from people doing wonderful things in my name, and I spent the day doing wonderful things for other people. So now I look forward to my birthday every year. I used to believe that I had to do something big to change the world in a positive way, but as I've gotten older, I realized that those tiny things that we do create a ripple effect. Something small like holding the door open for someone or even making eye contact with a person experiencing homelessness who's asking you for money or checking in with a friend who's hurting. It's like those little things can turn someone's day around so that they can be compassionate to someone else, and then the positive cycle just continues.
Absolutely. And I think even beyond all of just life and being a good person, I think there's a lot to be garnered from that, that the little things make the big things happen in our careers professionally as entertainers.
100%. Actually, my acting teacher says that all the time. Rob McCaskill here in New York City. I take his class weekly, and we have to celebrate the small victories. In class, we go around at the beginning of class, and everyone has to say what their small victory from that week is, and it doesn't have to do with performing. It can, or it can just be something like, "I went to the gym 3 times a week." And he says that the little small victories build momentum to the big victories, which I truly believe in. It's really amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, when we're kids, we all kind of know that. Understand that looking at kids. I'm thinking about my 3-year-old and
Mhm.
how minor little things are, and then they start compounding and building on top of one another. And then somewhere along the way of growing up, we forget that learning is a process and a
Mhm.
journey, and that we just think that we should immediately have the end result. And I think that's a very common thing with a lot of people, but especially in the entertainment industry.
100%. We tend to look at people's end result and think that we should be there at the beginning, and if we're not, then we're failures,
Yeah,
especially with social media. I mean, God bless social media. I'm so glad we weren't growing up with social media because I don't know how these kids do it today, but when you look at all those things and you don't look at the tiny little dots along that line that got them to a certain place, then you just think, "Oh, well, I didn't do it perfectly the first time, so clearly I'm never going to do it perfectly," but that's not the way it is.
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Mhm.
Everyone has is very rare that someone just shows up on their first go and gets everything they want. Sure, it happens, but
It's usually a coincidence.
yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to this next section here. And Lauren, of course, you're an entertainer. I'm an entertainer. And I think you'd agree that this industry is one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries either of us have experienced. And you know as well as I that in order to create and to have a successful career in this industry, like you're having now, takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while, yeah, there is an outrageous amount of fun and excitement being an entertainer, being on that stage, there are also our fair share of obstacles, challenges, and failures we are going to inevitably experience. And we're going to have to learn how to move forward through these if we want to continue doing this for our life and our career. So tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career? And how did you come out the other side better because of it?
Well, you're right about it being a very, very tough industry, very brutal. It sort of eats up the weak and strengthens a lot of people. I definitely got out of school thinking that I was gonna be on Broadway within a year, and obviously that was not the case. In fact, I didn't even get an agent from Showcase. I think maybe only a few people did from our class anyway, but I had to find a resilience within me that said over and over, "This is what I wanna do," and recommit myself many times. And you know what? I'm still recommitting myself even as we speak. One of the most challenging parts for me was joining the union because I got out of school and I was completely non-union. And for non-theater performers, Actors Equity Association is our theater union. And joining it, you have to earn weeks to join it, basically. Or you get offered an equity contract through a show, and then you just get your card and pay the dues, and you have your union card. However, I was going to these union calls as a non-union performer and not getting seen and showing up at 6 a.m., just getting let go. I finally got a break because a girlfriend of mine knew someone who knew someone who knew someone that was looking for a non-union actor. And that's how I got my job at North Shore Music Theater. I just emailed them basically and sent a little clip of me singing and my headshot and resume, and they hired me, which was hilarious. So, but before, and I was still non-union then, but that's how I got my first EMC points, which is sort of how you earn your way to the union. But when I was non-union, even getting cast, I was making less money per week that I definitely couldn't live on. I had no health insurance, um, and things were just much harder. And plus, coming from BOCO, which I think you would probably agree with, I kind of felt like a failure. They were very focused on success. And so the fact that I was non-union made me feel like I had sort of failed. But I got a break in October of 2012. I booked a regional job playing Betty in White Christmas at Surflight Theater in New Jersey on Long Beach Island, and I was going to get my equity card from it. Basically, they were giving me a non-union contract, but the last 2 weeks they were gonna give me an equity contract so that I would get my card from that.
Yeah.
But they didn't have to pay me
Yeah.
a union wage the whole time.
Right.
So that was their way around it. And, that was 2012 in October on Long Beach Island, and Hurricane Sandy hit. And I like to joke that it blew the theater away, but in actuality, it severely flooded the theater. It kinda decimated that whole community. No one was going to see theater, and there was no theater really to go to because everything was ruined.
Yeah.
And so they waited till the first day of rehearsal because they kinda thought they could clean it up. I think they waited like a week, and they changed rehearsals to New York City instead of being in New Jersey. And so similar to, it's kind of drawing parallels to the pandemic now. We kind of thought, "Oh, it'll be fine in a little bit." Well, they realized how bad it really was, and on the first day of rehearsal, they came in and canceled the show,
Oh, no.
which was pretty devastating because we were already all there and ready to work, and I had worked on my script, and I was the only non-union principal, so it meant the most to me. And the ensemble had been rehearsing for 3 days already, so they were oh, God bless. They were in the hallway rehearsing their tap numbers, and people were on the phone calling different theaters trying to see who would take us in, which no one would because everyone had already had their own casts for Christmas shows.
Yeah.
So I remember calling my agent. She was like, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. And there's nothing we can do as an act of God. Like the contract was just null and void." So I had no equity card, no job, no day job because I'd quit all my day jobs in preparation for doing the show. And I had subletted my apartment. So I just went home to Wisconsin and spent a couple months there. And it was really, that was a really hard time because I kind of felt, it felt hopeless, and I was back in Wisconsin and I felt like, what am I doing here? Um, it took me another 4 years to get my equity card. So 3.5 years later, I was still non-union. I was still auditioning. I had done some non-union shows at that point. I'd worked a lot at regional theaters where I was non-union, but the house was union, and I was earning some EMC points. And I wanted to start playing principals, so I started working at non-union houses playing principals. And ironically, I was I was playing Betty in White Christmas at another show at another theater in Kentucky, and one of the men in the show was probably in his 60s, and somehow I can't remember how I found out that he was making like $300 or $400 a week. And at that point I was 27, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, is this going to be the rest of my life? Like am I never going to have a higher pay rate than what I currently have? Like maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Maybe I'm not good enough." And maybe wanting it badly enough just isn't enough, and maybe having this school on my resume isn't enough. And that was really a sobering thought. So I took a step back. I took this full-time nannying job, and I took a step back and I thought, I'm just not going to audition for anything. If something comes to me, I had an agent. If something comes to me, I'll take it. And my agent called me in. This was spring. This was like January through May. And sometime I think in April, my agent called me in and said, "You're still non-union." And what are you doing? What steps are you taking to become union? We At this point we thought you would be, and the higher paying gigs are through the union. And you're not they weren't making a lot of commission from these little jobs that I was getting. If I was making 3 or $400 a week, they were only making 10%. So they kind of they sort I mean, I love my agents, I'm still with them, but they sort of said, like, "What's going on? Why is this happening?" And I was like, "I know, me too. I don't know why. I go to classes. I'm trying." And shortly after that, which I'll talk about later, I got my card. But I'm grateful for that time because there were so many years and months where I had to recommit myself. And even during that time, I said, "No, I still want to be a performer. I'm just not going to be spinning my wheels chasing after it. I'm going to wait for it to come to me. If it's truly meant to be." At this point, I've done enough that the universe knows what I want. And it did. It did come to me. And once I had that job, I was the most grateful person on the planet. I think I woke up every day, literally every single day I woke up and breathed a sigh of relief that I was a union member working because the job that I got was a tour. So thankfully I had a job for a year after that. And I'm so grateful for that time because it really centered me and it made me realize how how where I could be. Whenever I have a job, if I feel like complaining, I realize, you know what? But I remember where I was and how bad it can be. and and how much I can want it.
Absolutely. And you did mention about how, at the conservatory, and they they're quite single-minded, I should say, about the entertainment industry. I mean, after all, it is a musical theater degree, so they're teaching musical theater, but it's all Broadway, 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 Broadway or bust, right? And
Yep.
that's a fine mentality to have, but there is so much more to this entertainment industry that we were never really even educated on, or even didn't even drop a hint that anything existed outside of Broadway. So it does make it difficult to show up in that city and go, gosh, if I didn't get this, then what was that for? What's all this education? What's all this training for?
Mhm. Yes. I'm actually very involved with the alumni affairs department now, and I'm trying to change that mentality, which I think already has taken a swift turn. So I'm super happy about that because I agree. I think it's really detrimental for a young performer to go out into New York City and only see themselves in one way and not be flexible to change and grow and figure out where their niche is, because there's so many different ways that you can express yourself through art, and just being on Broadway and musical theater shows is not the only way at all.
No, absolutely not. There's so much out there. And by making yourself open to it, you just might find something that you're actually more passionate about.
Exactly. Yeah, go and get whatever you want. I mean, we actually I've just put together a mentorship program with the conservatory. I organized it with my friend Maya Kelleher, who's a graduate 2016. And because during the pandemic, we just thought people are graduating. The typical opportunities, even of auditioning, are not happening right now. So what are they gonna do? How are they gonna keep the fire lit under them when this stuff does come back? What are they gonna do to fill their time and to, fill their bucket of artistic creativity when everything is shut down? So we created this mentorship program. We kind of set out like to match grads with alumni and just have someone that can guide them through, these next couple months. And we were getting these surveys that we had them fill out, the new grads, and they were asking. It was so amazing, Dane, because none of the people there were so many people I had to look for because nobody from our class fit what they wanted. They were looking for drag performers and, people creating their own work and, you know, all these different little niche things, like a clown enthusiast, like people who knew how to clown and things that I would never have thought of when I was 22 and graduating. And I applaud them for thinking outside the box. And it's just something that we weren't really exposed to.
Absolutely. And that's really good to hear and encouraging to hear that that's what's happening now.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to this next section now, to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time you realized, yes, I am going to be an entertainer for a living. Or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing as an entertainer. Tell us about that.
I grew up singing with my mom, who also sang, and music was always very prevalent in my house, and my voice happened to be naturally operatic. So I kind of thought my only option to be a performer when I was young was to be an opera singer, which I wasn't really interested in. I was interested in being an elementary school teacher. I was that kid who would stay at recess. I would stay in the classroom and ask the teacher if she needed any help, or he and I would get, copies of worksheets and go home and play school with my friends, and I even got I got an overhead projector one Christmas from my parents, which makes me laugh so hard. Also, I don't even think they use overhead projectors anymore, but,
I would be very
it was
surprised if
like
they did.
right. It was like my dream to have an overhead projector that I could, like, I don't even know what I did with it. I think I just pretended I had a classroom full of students. So I was very into this, and I had very much set in my mind, when I was probably 10, 11, 12, that I was going to stay in Wisconsin, probably marry some guy that I went to school with, have a bunch of kids, and be an elementary school teacher, probably in the school that I attended when I was growing up. And I also danced at a company in Wisconsin, and we went to national competitions. One year we went to New York City when I was 14. And on one of our days off, we went to see The Music Man on Broadway, which Rebecca Luker was starring in, and I'd never heard of her before. But I sat down in that chair, and when I started to hear her sing, I realized that operatic singing like that wasn't just for opera, but that there were these other wonderful performers that were doing musical theater shows, that were singing in English, that were doing the same thing that I wanted to do, and it sort of opened up my eyes to a whole 'nother world, and oh gosh, when I heard her sing My White Knight, which Dane, because I sang it all the time in school, it I mean, I don't even know, I'm now even thinking about it, I'm kinda getting chills because it was such a transformative moment for me as a 14-year-old, and I it just clicked. I thought, "This is what I wanna do, I wanna be a performer." And so the show finished and the curtain went down, and my I turned to my mom and I said, "I wanna be on Broadway. I would like to be a singer on Broadway." And she was like, "What? You've always talked about being a teacher." And I said, "No, this is what I wanna do
Change
now."
my mind.
I was very mature. Yeah, exactly. Just changed my mind. So, thankfully, she was very encouraging. She said, "Do you wanna go to a performing arts high school or" and I kinda had my heart set on going to the public high school, which had a great arts program as well, and all my friends were there, and it's where my dad went to school when he was growing up, and so I thought, "No, I think I want to do a more structured thing in college, and instead in high school, I'll do the musicals in high school, and I'll kind of figure out where I wanna go from there." So they said, "Okay, great," and that's kinda how that's what brought me to the conservatory. But my amazing full circle moment happened in February because I met Rebecca Luker, and totally out of context, not even with performing, it was a totally different thing, and we sort of exchanged numbers, and we text a little bit now. So it just makes me laugh when I think back to, oh my gosh, I saw her oh my gosh, so many years ago. It was like 2001, and she totally changed my life. She has no clue. I never told her that because I didn't wanna fangirl out on her, but that that moment, I've always held her up on a pedestal. It always makes me laugh when people are like, "Who are you talking about?" People in the musical theater world know, but, she's not world famous or anything, but she changed my life.
I love that. That's such a good story. And I want to piggyback on that. And let's talk about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, the audition, the callbacks, if those happen to be a part of it. What was going on in your life? And what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
Well, this is kind of a continuation of the last story, the equity card story, because right after I had that meeting with my agent, about a month later, I got an appointment for the national tour of Cinderella, which when I booked that show, spoiler alert, that was my number one booked it moment. But to go back just a little bit to sort of explain to people that haven't gone through the process, how it happened was that in December, so I booked the tour in June of 2015. So in December of 2014, I was doing that show, White Christmas, in Kentucky, and I got an appointment for the first national tour of Cinderella, and I was freaking out. I'd never gotten an appointment for something that big, and it was right during that time when I was thinking, "Am I gonna be non-union for the rest of my life? Is this just gonna be my life?" And so when I got that appointment, I was like, "Of course, I'm in freaking Kentucky right now, and I can't go to New York City and, audition for this thing because I'm in this non-union show." And so my agent said, "Well, let me see if I can get you to send a video in." So they said yes. I did the sides and the songs, and they said, "Can you send in a dance tape because it's very important that you be able to dance." And ironically, someone in the cast of that show had been to a bunch of Cinderella dance calls and said she thought she could piece it together, the combo, like the audition combo, and she could teach it to me and film it for me. And she had the music too. I don't even know how this happened, but I said,
Great.
"Great, thank you so much, perfect." So I wrote the cast of people. I said, "I have someone that knows the combo. Would you like me to put it on tape?" And they said, "That's great." So I did this. I mean, this video is hilarious now looking back at it. It's really funny. I'm fine in it, but I'm just like, wow, I can't believe they continue to speak to me. So they, after that video, they said, "What are your measurements? We're trying to fit, it was a replacement for a tour. So they were trying to fit someone into a pre-existing costume." So I thought, oh my gosh, okay, well, I'll have to be honest about my measurements because that's going to be real. If I get the job, I can't lie or something. So I gave my real measurements. They said, "Great, perfect." And then I sent it off into the universe and I didn't hear about it for a couple days. So I heard back from my agent and they said, "You didn't get the job." They forwarded me the email that said, "We loved her. We thought she was great. However, we just need to see someone in person to know for sure." And there was a woman that was in person that we liked and we chose her. So I thought, okay, well, it wasn't meant to be, but I put my full effort into it and that's all you can do. So then cut to 6 months later. Now I'm sort of in this weird place where I'm nannying full time. I don't even know if I'm going to be a performer. And I get this appointment out of the blue. So now I'll walk you through this day. And this time they were looking for a fairy godmother cover and also someone who could cover the stepmother. So it was an ensemble track. So you had to waltz in a 25-pound dress,
Right.
believably, and partner with someone. And then you also had to believably play this fairy godmother who's very, ethereal and loving and wise. And then you also had to cover the wicked stepmother, who both of these women that were playing the roles were in their 50s. But they had to have someone who was younger to do both, to be able to fit into the ensemble and keep up with the fast pace of the show 8 times a week, but then also be able to step into these other roles,
Right.
which is kind of what I found out was my niche through this whole process. So let me walk you through the day. I went in on a Monday and I was late. I was running late because the 7 train wasn't working. So I had to flag down a cab, although because the train wasn't working, everybody else was running for cabs. I shared a cab with this other performer. She happened to be in Beautiful, the musical. We kind of chatted in the cab. And I was just praying that I would get there on time. I remember walking in to Pearl Studios, going up the stairs, sitting down. I was maybe 3 minutes late for my appointment time. And then the door opened and the woman came out, the monitor, and said, "Lauren Lukacek?" And I was like, "Yes, I'll go in." So I had no time to be nervous because I was just thanking, the
Like,
Lord that
I'm here.
I was here. They didn't notice that I was late. And I think that helped. I didn't sit there and just overthink everything. I was just worried about getting there. So I went into the room and it was Adam Caldwell was the casting director. It was just sort of a pre-screen to before they brought in the creative team to see if you were right. And I remember he gave me some notes and I came out of the room and I wrote them down on my iPhone because I thought, okay, I'm going to study these. So in case I get a call back, I know exactly what he said. And I remember there were girls that were talking that I listened to. I was overhearing some girls and they said, "Gosh, I've been in for this tour so many times. They never cast me. Why am I even here?" And so I thought, no, I'm going to stay positive. Like these women have been here a bunch of times. They haven't seen me yet. So, I'm going to stay positive. And I remember visualizing getting called back. I imagined getting the call and I did all this visualization work. And I went home and my agent wrote me and said, "You have a call back on Wednesday." So that was Monday. Then Wednesday I had a call back with the creative team. So I went back and did the material. I remember the director, Mark Brokaw, came out from behind the table and shook my hand. And he was doing that to everybody in the room, which really set me at ease, made me feel so comfortable. I felt like I was an equal to him. And so when I did the scenes and sang the songs, I felt like, you know what? I got this. Like I can do this. I did a good job already. They've already said yes to me to show these people and I'm just going to continue doing what I was doing. And I remember I got some notes from Mark and applied them and he said, "You know what? That's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to see." And so I was thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm golden. I'm great." So they called me back later that day for the dance call. And Josh Rhodes and was the choreographer and his associate choreographer, who's also his husband, Lee Wilkins, was there. And they taught us the Prince is Giving a Ball, which is sort of a, it's like the peasants coming out to dance, and it's more grounded and, pedestrian dancing. And they did a cut after that. And I got through that cut. And then they wanted to see if you could waltz. So they taught us a little waltz combination. And Josh and Lee were there were four girls left at that point. Josh and Lee were our partners when we performed them. They sort of, put a video camera up, and we're taping it so they could watch it later, I guess. But you'd think that you'd be more nervous dancing with the choreographer, but he was so at ease because he wanted you to be at ease. And I remember there was
Yeah.
one point where I forgot what was next, and he just he led me there in the dance, and didn't even say anything. And we looked at each other, and it was such a great audition, and such a great environment, really kind and loving and warm. And so I left kind of thinking, well, I did every single thing I could do, and everything that was in my control. I did a great job, and I'm proud of myself. And they said, okay, we'll let you know by Friday. So Thursday was maybe the longest day of my entire life.
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep that night because I thought this will change my whole life. I mean, everything I know will be different if I get this. And if I don't get it, I really will be disappointed. It'll really like send me into a tailspin. I remember getting up at 4 a.m. and journaling because I was like, okay, just picture. I was so into the visualization. I was like, picture getting the call, picture being on tour, picture everything. And so that I was still nannying. And so I was picking up this little girl from kindergarten at like 3 o'clock, and I was waiting for her. It happened to be the last day of school. This was the beginning of June. And I was watching her say goodbye to all her friends. She was going to see them after summer. And my phone rang, and I looked at it. It was my agent. And I picked it up, and my agent said, "You booked Cinderella. You got it. You did it, girl.
Yes.
So many years of work. You finally did it." They'd been with me for, oh gosh, like 5 years at that point. And yeah, it was amazing. It was such a wonderful, wonderful day. And I spent that whole time I was with her. I remember I brought her to a birthday party or something. And I was just on the phone the whole time. I was just calling. I was like, I don't even care about this anymore. I'm just calling all my friends, all my family. So then I left that was on Friday. On Tuesday, I left for a year,
Oh,
and
wow.
I was on tour. Yeah. It was like a really quick turnaround. And I just pinched myself every day. I mean, it was like the most incredible thing that could have ever happened to me, which is so funny because it wasn't a Broadway show. I always thought, oh, well, this is how I'm going to feel when I get into a Broadway show. But I was a raccoon puppet for part of that show. And I was the happiest raccoon puppet that you would ever seen. I mean, I was just thrilled to be in that show.
I love that. That's such a good story. And I love that it was such a memorable and you said, a warm audition experience.
Hmm.
I I love it when there are directors or the creative team that have that mentality, because there's really no need for an ego in those situations, because you might be choreographing, you might be directing or producing a show, but you can't do any of those things unless you have good people to work with. So everyone's
Agreed.
very important in their own way, and it's a collaboration. It's not this traditional, boss and employee situation, even though maybe they are paying your paycheck, but it's everyone needs to work together if anything's going to succeed. And I love that that creative team had embraced that and we're warm.
It's so true. You really do have to, I mean, you have to think of yourself as someone the director is looking for. And you're doing them a favor by being the person that they're looking for because they don't have to look anymore.
Yeah.
And, bringing that mentality into an audition room, even if they're not giving you the warmth, obviously it's much easier if you have a wonderful team like that is just saying, we want you to do well. But most of the time, any casting director class I've been to, or any creative team member that I've talked to after I've been cast, they always say, we want you to do well. Like, we might be tired behind the table and not showing it, but we are so, every time someone walks in the room, that's a chance for someone to blow us away. And so when you kind of think about it from their point of view, they're cheering you on, so there's no need to be scared because they want you to do well.
Yeah. And if you ever have had the opportunity to be on that side of the table, it's exhausting, it's tiring, and it's expensive. And
Right.
it's in a perfect world, someone picks up the phone and knows everyone that they want to cast for a show, and they just cast it by phoning their friends. That's the ideal
Right.
scenario, right? Because
Right.
auditioning is hard and it's long work, and you just want to work with good people. And if you know all those people, that's what you're going to do.
Exactly.
but it's just not a possibility. So you have to have auditions. You have to go, market yourself to the rest of the world so you can get people to show up and show what they got.
Exactly. Yeah, and be confident enough to say, "This is who I am. This is what I have to offer." And if it's not what you're looking for, then that's fine.
Absolutely.
We're not going to be a good match then. But I know that I'm good enough, and that's like such a hard adjustment to think of. I have something to offer you.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a moment to talk about the present. What projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And of course, we are amidst a lot of stuff in the world right now with this global pandemic, with all of the racial injustices that are happening. How do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
Well, to answer your last question first, this is something I've been thinking about a lot, and especially having so many friends who are currently in shows that we're running and and on the creative side of shows that we're running, they're all saying that it's going to be at least until January of 2021 until Broadway comes back. So then that makes me kind of think, okay, well, regional theaters, will they be following after, or will they be quicker because they're smaller houses, smaller markets? I'm not exactly sure. Right now, the union has to approve if it's a union theater. Non-union theater might just move forward on its own. I'm not sure how that's going to work. But union theater has to be approved by the union. And right now, they're not approving really anything that I think until there's like a vaccine. I'm not exactly sure, but they've laid out this plan. And I know that I have one girlfriend who was out at Tuacahn out in Utah, and they flew her out there, and then she kind of sat there for 2 months because the union couldn't agree with the theater's plan. So I'm actually not sure, but what I do hope is that when we do come back, whenever that is, that there are major changes in the way that theater is produced. And like you said, with all the racial injustice that is only being brought to our attention now, but has been happening for 400 years. Why do we not have more black and brown voices on the creative teams of these shows? Why is there no, I can't think of one black producer. There's maybe two black casting directors, and they're, you know, up and coming. And, we need more. We have a lot of black directors that aren't probably doing these big shows. They're not being asked to. Black choreographers, associate choreographers, playwrights, costumers, makeup and hair people, technical crew. It's such a white industry. And for that change to happen, we have to highlight those black artists that should be employed more. I just think it's so necessary, and it's about time. One of the things I'm doing on that end is I have a friend who is a very successful actress and has a lot of followers, and she kind of put a call out on Instagram for people to tag their favorite black directors and choreographers. And her idea was to put together a spreadsheet of these people so that she could present this list to industry professionals that make the decisions. However, I'm hoping that soon we have, black producers that are also making these decisions, but I'm helping her with that. So I'm basically, kind of assisting on that. She did that work, and now I'm collecting all the names. We have, let's see, 360 names that I've written down, and I'm slowly working through them, putting down like their website and what they consider themselves to be, like what their titles are, what their specialties are, how to contact them, all of that. And then she's going to put it out there in the world. She's going to put it on her page, and hopefully get it into the right hands of some people that can actually make some changes, because we need to have more representation of black folks, because for the theater landscape to, eventually become truly equal.
Absolutely. I could not agree more with that. And remind me, after this interview we're done talking, I have some names for you.
Oh, great. I would love that.
Yeah.
Besides working on that list, in February, I started a YouTube series called Sustainable Swaps, which are short videos, mostly 1 minute, that outline a more eco-friendly product to swap out with your traditional product. And I mainly focus on plastic-free, vegan, and cruelty-free products from small businesses, mainly female-owned. And now I'm seeking out more Black-owned businesses and products. And I'm just trying to keep it fun and easy, because I want a more sustainable lifestyle to become the norm. And I want to encourage people to try new things. And it all starts with small changes in your daily life to reduce your trash. And I think if people saw it as not such a big undertaking, that they would make these small changes, and people already are for sure. And I'd love to help kind of with that revolution. I mean, in addition to that, I really believe that the environmental importance of a plant-based diet is huge. I mean, there's so many different studies out there, but one of the studies that really stuck with me was this Oxford's University study that happened a couple years ago, where they basically said that a vegan diet reduces your food carbon footprint by something like 73%, which is crazy. Even just if you don't want to totally become vegan, which I'm not preaching that at all. I think if you want to eat meat some days, great. If you just cut back on your meat or cut back on your dairy or your eggs or whatever it is, that is so huge as well. And so I've been wanting to show people that a vegan diet is good for the planet and it's delicious. So I started another series that's also on the same YouTube channel right now. It's called Veg Out. And I basically go into vegan restaurants or restaurants that have vegan options and I test those menu items. And eventually I'd like to do sort of a vegan diners, drive-ins, and dives where
Yeah.
I'm Guy Fieri and I go into the kitchens of the chefs who create these delicious dishes and kind of film how they're made, because I think there's just a lot of like questions about vegan food from people that have never tried anything. They just think, oh, salads, tofu, bland, disgusting. And it's just become so much more intricate now. And my non-vegan fiance eats mostly vegan now because I've showed him how delicious it can be. Of course there's
Yeah.
junk food that's vegan, but so we can pig out on stuff too sometimes. But yeah, that's been kind of my mission as well. And to adapt to the pandemic, recently I've been getting vegan takeout food and or like frozen meals that vegan places deliver, and then just doing like a review in my house. So I have a couple of those on doc that I'm editing right now. I've learned how to edit, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, and so one day I hope to, kind of expand upon it, like create a website and get a blog going about like sustainable fashion and thrifting and all the beautiful stuff that goes along with that.
I love all of that stuff.
Thanks,
Well,
Dane.
yeah. And let's move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning Round. I am going to ask you a handful of questions. I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, I got it.
Let's do it. First question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
I'd say not having enough knowledge when I was 14 to understand there are many different kinds of performers in theater,
I love that
and that there
answer.
was room, yeah, there was room for legit singers like me and you.
Yeah. And the second question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Remember who you are. My mom always said that to me. Her dad said it to her whenever she left the house, and it's just a reminder of my worth, that I should stand up for myself and to remember the values that I was raised with and to treat others with kindness.
Love that. And the third question. What is something that is working for you now? Or if you'd like to go pre COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
Right now, reminding myself that I am the one I've been waiting for. That's a quote that I recently got from an amazing speaker, Reverend Jackie Lewis of Middle Collegiate Church, which I'm not religious at all, but she's an amazing speaker. And those words stuck with me from this anti-racism seminar she led. But basically, artistically, if I want something, I don't need permission from anyone else to do it. It's on me. And, if there's something that I see that's wrong in the world, I have the power to change it. I have the power to do something about it.
I love that. And in regards to that quote and with the arts and creativity, it's actually been coming up quite a bit recently in some of these interviews that I've been doing, that people are realizing because of this pandemic, because everything's just went stopped, that
Mhm.
we're realizing we can actually control our creativity and our art, which is seems quite obvious, but it's so easy to equate being creative and being artistic with that gig or that show or the contract, and making it and
Mhm.
monetizing it, or
Mhm.
making it part of our lives, which is great. That those are all good things, but to realize now that we're in control of that.
Yep. And it's right at I mean, we have so much technology to just do it ourselves right now. So why not do it? Why not try
For
it?
sure,
Who
for sure.
cares?
And the fourth question. What is the best resource, whether that's a book, a movie, a YouTube video, a podcast, maybe a piece of technology that you found is helping your career now?
The teachings of my coach, Jen Waldman. She has a blog on jenwaldman.com/blog and a podcast like yourself called The Long and Short of It. And it's so helpful for actors who want to buck with tradition, take ownership of their careers, and live a life of service that they're proud of. She's so inspiring. She also has online classes right now. Highly recommend her. She's changed my mind about so many things in the industry that I thought I didn't have control over, which turns out I totally do.
Yeah, I love it. And the fifth question: if you had to start your career from scratch, but still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently or would you keep it the same?
My first instinct was, maybe I wouldn't have gone to college for this. But I do but I do love my college experience, and I'm very proud of where I came from, but it was very expensive. I probably would have spent more time after college continuing to train, which is something I kinda didn't think I needed because I already have a degree from the Boston Conservatory, so why do I need to keep training? But I now I realize you have to go to acting class still, you still have to go to dance class, I get coached before every audition still, and there's no shame in that, it's just part of being an actor.
Yeah, love it. And the last question: what is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in the industry that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I would say stop comparing yourself to others and instead focus that energy on becoming the best artist you can be. Spend less time on Instagram and just know that everyone has their own journey that has ups and downs that you never see.
Absolutely. That is incredibly sound advice. And to wrap up this interview, it is time to give yourself a plug. Where can we
Ooh,
find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
I'll just re-promote. You can find Sustainable Swaps and Veg Out on YouTube under Sustainable Swaps with Lauren Lukacek, or you can go to my website, www.laurenlukacek.com. And I'm also on Instagram a lot. Probably should take my own advice. My name's at Lauren Lukacek, Lukacek. And if anybody out there has an idea, first of all, if you have a black director or preferred choreographer or someone that you want to, get on that list, please DM me on there. But also, if you have a sustainable swap, something eco-friendly that you use in your house, or any questions, feel free to write me. I'm super open book. And thank you so much for having me, Dane.
Oh, thank you so much, Lauren, for being here and joining me. It's been wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today. My one call to action for you is to go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community, where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you advance your entertainment career. Don't miss an episode. We have a new guest 7 days a week. Search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow. Outro.
Do you think that everybody should know that we sang our duet together for Showcase?
Yeah, I'll put that on the. I'll tag that in the end.
It's because of you that I'm here in New York. Sorry, I let you do your little outro.
No, that's it. We'll cut there. I'll clean it all up. It's gonna be great.
Oh, great.
Okay, promise. We're all done now. Cue the sound effect.